p.m. and it is the first public meeting that we've had this year. So I've got to remember how we did this. So I ride a bike, eh? All right, so item 1 is our official opening, which I've done, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditions of the Ngarma people on whose land we gathered here today, and then just let everyone know that this meeting is live streamed and a recording of the meeting will be made. Item 2 is about this meeting. The purpose of the public agenda briefing session is for councillors to ask questions and obtain additional information relating to items only on the next OCN meeting. No decisions are made today. This meeting is conducted as a public meeting of council, and so standing orders will apply. Questions asked by councillors are to be answered by the CEO or a person nominated by the CEO. And even though the meeting is live streamed, you're not to a recording will be made available, but these records are copyright material and cannot be used without permission of the CEO. 3 is our record of attendance and apologies, of which we have all councillors in attendance. We have Councillor Byrne online, all staff are in attendance. 4 is public question time. Are there any questions from the public?
Yeah. Although how do we do it? Is it based on the agenda items?
It must relate to this agenda.
I had a couple of questions about the waste station tender that is being looked at. Right?
So item 12.1, 7 Mile Waste Facility.
That's right. Yeah.
And okay. Some questions on that.
Yeah.
You can stand up, Sarah.
Do I do that now?
Up to the left hand.
Right. Sorry, this is my first time.
You have 2 minutes and you have 2 questions, although you're the only member of the public here, so we might allow you just to ask some questions. Oh, yeah, and you've got to say your name and your suburb.
Okay.
You're from.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Sarah Whelan. The suburb I live in, I guess.
Yes.
Bang. Yeah, everyone knows in my cars. So my question is around local procurement and how that's evaluated. And then my other question is based on the contractor that has been recommended. Have they done previous work up here for the city? And were there significant variations that are applied that were over and above what their tendered price was?
I'll direct that to the CEO.
Yeah,
okay, so through the chair, need to be a bit careful around some commercial in confidence elements, considering this tender hasn't been awarded as yet. In relation to the way that locals are differentiated against somebody else is in accordance with council's regional price preference policy. So in this case, there is a 10% discount applied to local contractors, and that is the price on which the tender is evaluated on, compared to a contractor who's not based here on a permanent basis. So there's very clear policy provisions around how that comparison is done. In relation to the preferred contractor, they were the contractor who did the closure of Cell 0 and the construction of Cell 1 and 2 for the city previously. And in relation to variations, I'd need to take that on notice.
Okay. If I can just add also, the 10% threshold for local purchasing is something we've looked at, and that is actually a fixed requirement within the Local Government Act. We don't actually have discretion to go above that. So we're awarding the greatest amount that we can for local procurement under the Act.
Brilliant. Yeah, sure, that would be very. I was a bit disheartened to see that of the those that tendered, none of them went to obviously a local organization.
So, I mean, through the chair, price is just one of the considerations, and the report that's now available publicly talks to the other criteria that the tender is needed to address in terms of how they propose to do the works and what their capacity to be able to deliver. And obviously that's a fairly key consideration if a contractor is not based here on a permanent basis.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay. There's no more public questions. We'll go to item 5, which is petitions, deputations and presentations of Sarah Nil. Item 6 is declarations of interest. Do any councillors have a declaration of interest they'd like to make on any of the items on the agenda? No. If that changes, please let us know before the meeting next week. 7 is the confirmation of minutes and business arriving from minutes of previous meeting, which we will deal with next week. 8, announcements by a person presiding with that discussion. All the meetings that I had in the month of December and January. I would like to just amend that I don't think I was at the WA Police Force meeting. Call that. Was that a briefing with the WA Police?
I don't know. I didn't add that to your diary, so perhaps we can remove that. For
to check that. I don't recall meeting with them, not on an official capacity anyway. All that. 9 is corporate and commercial reports with the statements for period ending 30th of November and the 31st of December. With the officer's recommendation on page 8 that council received the financial statements for the period ending 31st of December, which includes November 2025. Are there any questions, councillors, on our statements? No? Ratios are good. Money's in. Interest rates are going up, which is good for those who have money in the bank, not good for others. Okay. 9.2 is the list of payments for the 1st of November through to the 31st of December 2025. With the officer's recommendation, the council received the list of payments totaling $43.5 million, as detailed in attachments 1, 2 and 3. Are there any questions, councillors, on any of the payments made through November, December of last year?
On page 36 of 76, for Karratha Development Proprietary Limited, we have 3 payments there totaling over $8 million for the Bulgar apartments. So I was just wondering what those initial payments are for and what component of the project that covers.
Yeah, I might take that on notice and give you a detailed response. Yep, that's it.
Happy with that? Yep.
Yeah, I'll provide and take it on notice. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Jansen?
Sort of follow on from that actual housing point. What independent oversight is in place to control cost blowouts on the housing developments?
Yeah, there's a couple of mechanisms. Once again, I might take that on notice and provide you with a detailed response, but there are independent assessments done and certain milestones need to be met and so on. So we are tracking those projects very closely.
And also, if I'm going to say, like through the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting that we had today as well, we've got all those things on the Audit Risk Committee's agenda as well in relation to the housing things to make sure that we have all the controls in place and mitigation of risks as the projects start and finish. So there's a few eyes looking over this as we move forward. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have. And I apologise if this reflects on you, Councillor Byrne, but 1569 or 679 on page 43. It just got Councillor Byrne's allowance. I think there needs to be a little bit more clarity on what that was.
It's like December and January.
But it's still, yeah. I still think there needs more information underneath that allowance. 15679.
The amount.
The amount.
Okay.
It's double and then extra.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just confirm why it's double. Yep.
And the extra as well.
Yep. No, that's fine. We can have a look at that
Okay.
pro rata. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's all transparent.
So that's right.
So
So
it's
just
not a
so, yeah.
problem. We can have a look at that.
Thank you.
Yes. Your breakdown. Yeah.
Councillor Jansen.
Regarding the payments too, what is being done to increase local contractor participation on projects? And I know the legislation states the 10% allowance for local contractors, but what are we actually doing in that space to, is there something we can do to push back against the legislation?
Are you talking about
How do we get more local?
city projects? Or?
Yeah. On all the tenders.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. It's, I think you're pointing to, should we be lobbying or advocating to the state government for legislative change? That's not currently in our advocacy positions, but we could take that into consideration, maybe bring something back to a council workshop to consider. Because as I mentioned a moment ago, we have some quite rigid sort of parameters that we're operating within. In terms of promoting local suppliers, there's a number of different things that we do. Obviously, we through KDCCI, if I can on Sarah promote, but we at their breakfast we actually promote all of the tenders that are coming on down the path. We try to put them in local newspapers, and you know, so there is different public notices, and also our tenders do tend to go through a I don't know what it's called, tender link or something like that. So local suppliers are encouraged to sort of register there, and those who are looking for contract work through the city will be registered on Tenderlink. So that's the other thing, is to encourage local suppliers to go on there, because it'll all kind of come through that avenue as well. Yeah, so look, and if we're aware of local suppliers, we will reach out to them as well. But it's probably depends on the kind of contract it is, and as to what's the best way to get the news out, and how large it is, and that sort of thing, as to what our procurement process is as well. So yeah, a variety of different techniques are used, but happy to take your suggestions as well.
Any other questions on the list of payments? Nope. Martin, you're okay online? Okay, 9.3 is the investments per period ended 31st of December 2025. With the officer's recommendation, the council received the investment report for the period ending 31st of December, which also includes November. Are there any questions, councillors, on our investments? Nope. No, as I said before, interest rates are going up, so the reserve balance is looking healthier as that continues. All right, if there's no questions in that, 9.4 is our long-term financial plan. With the officer's recommendation, the council resolved to adopt the long-term financial plan for 2026 to 2036 as attached, of which we have a presentation.
Thank you. For those that are online and probably haven't heard the long-term financial plan before, it's a working document, but it's a snapshot at time with a 10-year forecast based on the information available as at that point. We forecast out the next 10 years based on current business as usual, our anticipated capital works projects and initiatives endorsed by council. It's subject to change as projects, priorities and directions change. So each year there's a review of the long-term financial plan. This long-term financial plan iteration this long-term financial plan iteration outlines the city's financial position, outlines forward capital works, models known projects, plans and renewals, informs the annual budget. The following slide shows the forecast revenue and forecast expenditure that we have in this current long-term financial plan iteration. The rates is 36% of total forecast revenue for the 2026-27 forecast. Contributions and operating grants are 19%. Fees and charges outside of Western Airport is 12%. And with forecast expenditure, the largest forecast expenditure is materials and contracts at 41%, followed by employee costs at 39%, and depreciation, which is a non-cash item, makes up 20% of our total expenditure. The capital and expenditure and funding forecast is capital expenditure includes only council endorsed capital expenditure. The sources of funds, which are the blue, includes grants, partnerships, loans, asset sales, and reserve funding. The shortfalls in available funds to complete the projects typically sourced from reserves, usually our infrastructure reserve, and funding becomes lighter from 2029-30 as it progressively is more difficult to make assumptions on grant funding over a longer period of time. The financial ratio. So the financial ratio is a guide to determine overall financial health of the local government. It's a relatively new financial ratio, and it's a series of ratios that are calculated and rolled up into the LGFI. This local government financial ratio that's attached to the long-term financial plan over the period of time. The target is actually the orange line, and the blue bars are exceeding that target over the whole 10-year period of the long-term financial plan.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any questions, councillors, on our long-term financial plan? I have one. Do we need to refer to the REM plan?
Do we need to?
Yeah, do we need to? Yeah. Because their growth rate suggests that the city of Karratha is going to grow by 0.1%.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's actually, we're working with REM plan. If I can, I'll just check with the director, but we are talking to REM plan about improving their methods of quantifying population change for Karratha, because they use long-term property changes, I think is how they do it, isn't it? Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, but my understanding is that, yeah, the data sources that they use are very much under what the reality is for Karratha. So we are, it is one of the only sort of published sources for this kind of information. So
yeah, because obviously you using the REM plan 0.1% growth,
yeah,
affects all our ratios.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
like everything when we're looking into 10 years, is like we're basing that on that growth rate.
Yeah,
which is obviously ultra conservative.
Yeah.
If not unreliable as a data set. As anyone that's lived here the last 10 years understands that the growth of this town is more than 0.1% per year. Yeah, that's the only question I had.
And can I ask on that? So is REM plan something that's continuously updated, or is it like the census that's only done every?
I'll get some more information on REM plans, method of calculation, how often they do it. They're effectively the standard that's used for local government and state government for this kind of data. So it's very common to use them, but I'll bring some more information about how often they do it, and also some comments about the reliability of the data for you to have for your consideration next week.
Yeah, because if you look at the long-term financial plan, it looks like we make decisions now in the next couple of years, and then after 5 years we shouldn't be making any major decisions because we're getting closer and closer to, not having as much money.
Yeah, sure.
It's all based on that REM plan data.
Yeah.
That's Jansen.
The employee operating costs. How will we measure that the extra 27 staff improve service delivery?
once again, good questions. The metrics for that are not included in the LTFP, but there will be separate pieces of work around service levels and metrics around service levels that we'll bring to council probably this financial year as we start to, we're putting all of the pieces in place around that, and you'll start to see some information coming through this financial year and next financial year. And that will start to show you how you'll be able to actually start to measure what services are we providing, what financials, what FTE and what KPIs. So we're building all of that at the moment, and that'll give you in the longer term much more visibility about that. And you'll be able to see that being tracked and be able to hold the city accountable for that as well.
Thank you.
That's right.
And one more.
Yes.
The 100 mil for new borrowings for the Bulgara Housing Initiative. What's our expected peak borrowings over the 10-year plan? And do we actually have what triggers us to pause on borrowings? Do we have a point where we'll pause?
Do you want to take that on notice or?
Yeah, we'll take that on notice. The Bulgara,
It's not
it's not 100 million.
No,
so
it says sort of community infrastructure plan, but it says Bulgara housing.
It's all rolled into one.
Yeah,
It's been combined, so
I'll take that on
it
notice.
might be good to split it out a bit for people that want a breakdown.
Yeah, no, definitely take that on notice and come back to you on that.
Yeah, the answer is 44 million.
Is the balance. Yeah. So 56 for Bulgara apartments
And community infrastructure plans. So
yeah, and we have been looking at some prudent use of debt to just assist us with cash flowing some of these projects.
Yeah, which I thought was around 100 mil beyond the Bulgara thing.
Yeah, but let's make sure that let's make sure we properly answer your questions. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions of the long-term financial plan? Nope. Moving on to 10.1, which is community experience reports and the draft engagement policy CS24 and the guidelines. With the officer's recommendation, the council endorsed the draft revised community engagement policy and draft engagement guidelines to be advertised for public comment. Do we have any questions, councillors? Councillor Jansen?
How will we prove that the community engagement changes decisions rather than just informing the public?
Say that again.
How will we prove that the community engagement actually changes decisions rather than just informing the public?
Yeah, inform versus engage and influence. Yeah. You want to take
through the chair.
Know that their influence actually going to take it on.
Yeah, look, it would depend on each project and the level of engagement that has been identified for that project. There'll be some projects where we'll draw on what we're calling a knowledge bank, which will be from previous engagement that we've undertaken. Ultimately, we are expecting to be very transparent with all the data that we collect. So at the moment, you'll notice on our What We Make It page that we publish all our outcomes reports and survey results. Additionally, that feedback will go back to the community, and when we've finalised any work that data was informing, we also will make sure that we close the feedback loop. Additionally, the new framework itself will have a monitoring and evaluation process. So we will look at the lessons learned, how we monitor and how the feedback actually contributed to the decision-making process.
Any other questions? Councillor Harris?
Other one. The rationale says that the state government's likely to introduce this charter in this year sometime. Did we get any prelude to how it might look, or it's just saying we've got to come up with an engagement document? Is that because obviously if they come out and say we've got to include something else, you're gonna have to review it again within 6 months, and is it
Yeah,
I can answer that.
yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure. So through the chair, we don't know what the regulations look like at this stage, and we're not sure when they will be finalised for review or feedback. What we do know is we do have officers that are involved in the Walga working group that is contributing to what that might look like. So I think we're basing it around what we are thinking the state government will implement, but also best practice and what we've learned from our own engagement across our community and how they would like us to engage with them. So if it doesn't meet the regulations, I'm sure it would just be a few tweaks we need to make, but what we do know is what our community is asking from us.
And if I could just reiterate a really key point there, quite a few of us on the executive team, Emma and myself in particular, have worked in other organisations which have had very solid community engagement practices within their local governments. So we've seen in real practice how the industry tends to do these things, what works, what doesn't. One of the things we know is that it's not a perfect science. So these things are always going to be getting tweaked and improved because we will be learning as we go. But I think what we're building here is as good as I've seen. So I think, as Emma said, we're probably got to have it 95% right, and then some modifications to perhaps round it out to fit the legislation. But I'd be very surprised if there's anything that deviates too much from what we're doing. Yeah.
And if I can add this maybe aspiration or inspiration, is that usually in the city of Karratha, all we do, we lead the local government class, and Walga and the state actually look to us for a lot of things. And I would hazard guess that our staff are going to do as best as they can, and that in actual fact, if we do this first, that a lot of local governments will be learning from us. Is my expectation.
And that is already occurring, if I might say.
Sorry.
We are getting queries from other local governments as to how we have undertaken our engagements. So.
Any other questions on our draft engagement policy? Okay, moving on to 11. New thing for my computer. I go to the menu item, go back. It's minimised. That's better. All good. All right. 11 is development services reports. 1 is the corporate emissions profile and emissions reduction plan for 2025, of which we have a presentation. Okay, Marinda, right, it's all yours.
The federal government signed up to the Paris Agreement, so that means that we've made commitments to reduce our emissions in line with international standards. And the state government has also set targets to reduce emissions. So the next stage is for the local governments to enact that. So the City of Karratha is on this project to do our bit to reduce emissions across the sector. So this project's been done in 2 stages. The first one is to do our baseline, to understand where our emissions are coming from, and the second stage is to develop a reduction plan to reduce those over time. So we now know that we produce over 53,000 tonnes, and we know that our main source of emission is from landfill, followed by electricity and fleet. So from this account, we can now develop an implementation plan or a emission reduction pathway, which is detailed in the attachment. And that's essentially a list of actions to avoid, reduce, replace and offset our emissions. Part of that is also to set some targets. So our targets now as a local government are to reduce our emissions by 22% by 2030, around about 50% by 2040, and near net zero by 2050. This is in line with the state targets. Other targets are to reduce our renewable energy. So the main actions in our emission reduction pathway fall in these 6 categories. The first one being renewable energy, which is largely solar and battery over time. Second is energy efficiency, so looking at our building mechanics and our lighting to try and make them as efficient as possible. Our street lights to upgrade our own LED lighting to LED, and advocate that Horizon Power do the same. fleet transitioning to low and zero emission vehicles over time, waste to implement the waste management and resource recovery strategy, but particularly in areas that impact on the climate, such as landfill gas capture, organics recovery and waste to energy, and finally embedding our emission reduction in our governance structures. So setting targets, reporting annually, incorporating into our risk management, climate policies and things like that. So to do this, these targets will mean that we can do our bit to contribute towards the state's reporting, and that will also set Karratha as a leader north of Perth and emission reduction.
Okay, councillors, do we have any questions on our Mr. Wilk? Straight up, councillor. Yes.
I have a question about the organics recovery. In the report, it mentions that FOGO is not currently a viable emission reduction option for the region, but it also mentions that it's part of the city's waste strategy to assess feasibility for food and garden organics recovery. So is the city going to do a feasibility, or is the answer no? And if, what was the for one on the tail end of that, why is it not viable, not financially viable, or not actually physically possible?
So through the chair, within the first 2 years, it's the feasibility study as part of implementing the strategy. Historically, our trials have been not effective and not cost effective. So there is a scale and volume that is required to make it economically viable, and that's what we need to prove.
And would it have, if you could prove it to be economically viable, would you have trouble with contamination like we do with the regular recycling program?
Yeah, that will be the number one issue to address.
This down the southwest, like around Bunbury, there's local governments that are coming together to try and make FOGO work, because it's still on that big catchment, still doesn't stack up. So they're having to come together to try to make FOGO actually viable for a number of councils together. Any other quick councillors?
The waste to energy slide. We talked about reducing 81% figure. I saw our approach to this. It looks like that methane gas, and you can turn that into power. Obviously, that power link is what I call renewable power. It's come from the waste. So surely that back into the system to reduce those street light power usage and so forth. I know we're talking about solar to do it, but obviously we're taking the methane gas that's coming into the environment, collecting and turning it into an energy source that we can then put back into the grid. So how far away is the actual that another couple of years away before we get to
through the chair, within the first 2 years of our waste resource recovery strategy, we've got investigating waste to energy again. We have previously investigated. In fact, we've signed agreements with waste to energy companies, but again, it needs a scale and a volume. In terms of methane emissions, obviously our landfill is the number one contributor. We obviously have, and there's an item today to look at constructing new cells. We've got an open cell at the moment that has no carbon capture. Obviously, when we close the cell, we have an ability to look at how we capture that. Currently, we're not necessarily viable to produce sufficient energy to run our own service out there, but I would suggest to you that it's likely in the very near future that we'll have sufficient to be able to turn that into an energy source, but arguably for our own purpose before we'd contemplate putting that to the grid.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harris.
All right, so out of the document, I found that we've got 2,000 streetlights in this town. Right, 1,000 have already been converted to LED. So that leaves approximately 1,000 more streetlights to convert. Obviously, they're controlled by Western Power. So are they likely to be changing them sooner or later, or do we, how do we get them to ramp up that? Is that something they're looking at?
Yeah.
So through the chair, we can obviously advocate for an accelerated asset renewal program, but typically it's done based on asset condition and replacing when they're due to be replaced.
we've got no idea on how what that looks like on the ground, whether they normally replace 50 a year or.
No, through the chair, we meet with them regularly and get updates from them on terms of their programs, and we can inquire as to what their program might look like.
It's an interesting question because if it's their asset, why are we taking the emissions?
Through the chair, we pay for the service.
We're the user.
Yes, it's still their asset.
Correct. Within our roads. It's a service afforded to the local government.
All right. So you guys can
Yes.
Another one, Councillor Harris.
Righto. So the proposal is to add 200 kilowatts of solar per year to city assets. What does that look like? You know, is that one building a year, or is that what does 200 kilowatts of solar look like? And at the same time, what does 500 kilowatts of battery storage look like? And what sort of costing are we looking at? I think I did see, was it 50,000 we're going to do on?
Through the chair, I'd have to take it on notice as relates to the costing for batteries, and that's certainly not projected for a number of years yet because the technology's not quite where we need it to be. But in terms of the 200 kilowatts per annum for buildings, it's not intended that we will absolutely deliver 200 kilowatts every year. It's intended that we look at our forward program of work. So, for instance, if we do upgrades to the KLP or constructing a new community hall or whatever it may be, and we make sure that on average over the life of the implementation, we're aiming to achieve at least 200 kilowatts per annum. But it may be that it's 600 kilowatts per year, in 1 year, and then nothing for the next couple of years.
Councillor Harris, any other questions? I have a couple. That might end up in recommendations, but I don't think we had to make an question out of it. Will we this project, will it go to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee?
Which project's that?
The emissions profile, this plan. Well, once the plan becomes a project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So once we've got a project on how we're proceeding, that it goes to the Audit and Risk Committee, because I can see a lot of risks that need to be developed within this as well when it comes to cost recovery and emission. There's a lot involved in this that needs sort of governance oversight over. So that's my question: is will it be going to?
Well,
as a recommendation, I guess.
Yeah. So this project is part of reducing risk, and then you're also talking about the risk of project implementation and tracking as well.
Yes.
So there's a number of different ways that we control and manage project delivery risk, and that's through our project management framework. But then there's also, council, for example, could set KPIs, or we could provide KPI reporting in terms of the outcomes and the tracking against that.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably a piece of work for us to do in looking at the implementation, which is how we track and then report to you on progress against the plan is really what I'm hearing you say, which we can absolutely build that in. It doesn't necessarily need to go to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. This is an example of a plan or a strategy that we should be tracking. What we say we're going to do, we should be tracking and reporting on that anyway. So it should be.
So through the chair, for instance, that could be one way of audit updates.
Yeah,
that's right. The strategies. Yeah, all sides.
Yeah, which I think is what needs to happen, because there'll be a lot within this that the knowledge that councillors need to understand as we progress through is going to be more and more intense, I guess. My next question is this is great. We're going this path, but one of the concerns I have is as government actually mandates not just local government but businesses to get in line with this, and then procurement through major contractors like Rio Tinto, Woodside, and such forth. Will the city play a bit of a leading role, as we're doing this anyway,
Mm.
to making sure that the wider community has the information required on their path to getting their emissions down and reaching net zero, as the consequence of government decisions will eventually come onto small to medium enterprises who have to deal with large companies in order just to procure work.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack in that, but if I take that as a question, I think there's a bit there where you're saying that the cost of implementing these schemes and to comply with these schemes potentially rolls down into small, medium-sized business. There's an impact further down the supply chain. Does that kind of pick up on your theme?
There is, and what I get concerned about is that the small to medium enterprises don't have the capacity or capability to do these things, whereas our local government, we're leading in this space because we're doing things before they're mandated to do. Posing it as a question, and I know it's going to be a longer discussion in the future. I sort of put it out there because it's a concern I've had for a little bit before we started going down this path, and it'll raise its head sooner rather than later.
Well, the other part I heard was to what extent we can educate the community broadly and also small to medium-sized businesses within our community about simple steps that they can take so that they can be a part of the low carbon journey. So that's another way to look at it as part of our city growth, small business support, working, in partnership with organisations like KDCCI about how we, there's things we're learning about simple things you can do as a business to ... right? So
at the end of the day, it'll come, whatever rules are put in place, it'll come down to a procurement decision on whether that business gets the work or does not get the work.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, interesting times.
Yeah. Any more questions? No. Okay. 11.2 is the request for final adoption of the scheme amendment number 60, the City of Karratha's local planning scheme number 8, the omnibus amendment. We have a presentation. Thank you, Ben.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to actually provide a quick update on the omnibus. And for those that don't know, an omnibus amendment is a multitude of unrelated scheme amendments conveniently bundled together. And quite often it's making changes to scheme text, maps, and those kinds of things, correcting errors. In terms of this one, we're looking to combine a total of 206 changes together as an interim measure before we go and create our new scheme. As well as that, it's waiting for the charter to be completed and logged into that. In terms of where it's at, it was originally initiated with Council for public consultation back in April. Since then, it was advertised between October and December for the statutory 42 days, and then had an additional 28 days, of which we received 1 public consultation and 3 state referral agencies. Of the 206 changes, 49% of them are requirements or consistency changes required by the state legislation. 23% are amendments to development standards and land use permissibilities that are linked to those required changes, and then you've got the 2 smaller 12 and 17 which relate to your mapping and your minor spelling grammatical changes. In terms of the next steps, it's coming to council for final approval, subject to modifications. Those modifications include references to the management documentation that relates to Murujuga National Park, and that's from consideration from submissions, and that's then form part of that. So in total, 209 changes, and the last entity or the people that do the final approval is the Minister of WPC.
Councillors, are there any questions?
Always nervous asking about our scheme amendment changes. I feel like we come off looking worse than we started. What was the public submission about? Can you give us some information about what it was they wanted to have an opinion on?
Through the chair, I might refer that to the acting manager if I may. Ben, do you want to, you can stand back up if you like.
Was that the public submission?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so that one related to if they had any, or if there's any modifications that would relate back to them, that's pretty much the extent of the comments. There's nothing of concern in the submission.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one, sort of making an amendment about town planning scheme, if I'm reading this right, read it wrong. Scheme amendment comprises of 206 modifications. So I think we've had a conversation before about a larger review of it, and mentioned the director was saying it's quite long and expensive, but obviously another modification is a time to look at the whole scheme. But do any work?
So through the chair, this is an interim measure forward of a full scheme review.
Yeah.
So typically a scheme should have a high level review every 5, and you'd probably be reviewing them in full every 10 years.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
I don't think any local government meets that standard.
I agree with that.
The reason that we haven't launched into a full scheme review at this point in time is because when we had our local planning strategy endorsed by the WAPC in 2021, it lacked 2 key pieces of information, which were a bushfire hazard assessment of the local government area, as well as an updated coastal hazard risk management adaptation plan. So that's the char map that Ben was referring to. It's required under state planning policy, and the existing char map that we have is no longer compliant with state planning policy. So we're undertaking that piece of work at the moment.
Yeah.
We need some new modelling. Once that piece of work is done, then we're in a position to commence the scheme.
Any other questions?
Just one. What's the time frame for the scheme amendment?
For this scheme amendment. So this is council's final endorsement.
Yeah.
It then gets lodged to the West Australian Planning Commission. It'll be considered by them and referred to the minister for approval. It is basically up to the minister as to how long it takes for it to get through that process, but I would expect probably another 4 months.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Moving on to 11.3, which is our economic development and tourism strategy, which I presume we have a presentation. Adrian's.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. So the economic development and tourism strategy was presented to you in draft form in November. It was adopted then for a period of public consultation. So we've gone out publicly on our usual channels, What We Make It, and advertising through the city's website. We've also, as you can see there, undertaken a number of physical activations, ensuring we have one in each of our towns, and focusing primarily on the KDCCI's Chamber Connect forum, just to close the loop with all of the initial stakeholders who provided input into the strategy in the first place. So you can see the number of participants there, and through that process we had 13 submissions received through the What We Make platform and a further 5 by email, in addition to the feedback taken from participants at each of these activations. So what we have here is basically a summary of all the feedback that was received, and the number in brackets is the number of submissions that refer to that matter. So as you can see there, the top 5 are primarily all tourism related, to do with accommodation, bookable experiences, infrastructure, destination marketing. So there's a heavy tourism focus from the community, and as you can see, there's a heavy tourism focus within the strategy as well. Jump on the next slide. So some of the things that had a lower number of submissions, again, there's a few tourism ones in there. And there's a few individual ones in terms of impact of new developments on existing businesses, and a really important one there about ensuring we collaborate with traditional owners in development of any of our tourism products. So from all of that feedback, there were 3 minor wording changes to the strategy, just to be more specific in certain projects and activities in relation to the feedback received. Nothing substantive in terms of changes, and one of the really positive things was that a lot of the feedback related to projects and activities that were already in the strategy, which sort of tells us we're on the right track, and the engagement was good first up, and the strategy was developed in line with that. So from here, what we're going to seek for you to do this month is endorse the final strategy. The strategy has been presented to you previously. There's 5 pillars in the main economic development and tourism strategy. 4 of them relate to economic development and primarily around enabling small business development. And then there is a 5th pillar of tourism, which has sort of 5 sub-pillars within it. So in terms of the economic development component, we're proposing we have 4 FTE resources in economic development at the moment. We are proposing that we can deliver all of the BAU and priority actions within the strategy with those resources. All of the plus actions will be considered on a sort of year-by-year basis in terms of what capacity we have, what we can deliver, and what we can outsource, depending on priorities at the top. As far as tourism is concerned, of those 5 sub-pillars, there's only one that we are resourced to deliver at the moment, and that is visitor servicing through the Karratha Tourism and Visitor Centre. So what we are proposing, if tourism is a priority and if the strategy is adopted as is, we are proposing to introduce a new tourism development resource that will oversee delivery of the full all 5 tourism sub-pillars. Obviously, one of those being visitor servicing, which will form part of that umbrella. So that's essentially it for the strategy. But yeah. Really exciting for us. It's obviously been 12 and a bit months in the making, so it'd be good to get on and start delivering some of these projects, in particular the tourism space with Murajuga Cultural Landscape, and recently received World Heritage listing, the Consig Bay Road should be built in the next couple of years, and the ceiling of the rest of Red Dot Highway. So really important that we can get into some of the activities in this strategy and build our capacity in the region with our tourism vendors.
Thank you, Adrian. Does anyone have any questions on our economic development and tourism strategy?
Yeah, I have a couple, and it's really more about an implementation plan. In pillar 3.2 is local procurement, and the policy has been updated, but is there a way that we can kind of, I know we do, in part of the CEO's KPIs, we do the procurement measurement. Is there somewhere we can embed that measurement into this document as well for our local procurement? So pillar 3, 3.2, and it talks about review and promote local. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's the ES policy is updated, but is there any measurement tool that can be put into this?
Sure. Can I take that one on notice and give it some thought and respond to you? Yeah, I understand where your logic there. Yeah.
And the other one was in pillar 4, which I need to find now. It's about talent and attraction. It was 4.1.2, and it's talking about providing for the support for tertiary education.
Mm-hmm.
Can we also bring that back to high school? I hate that word.
Advocacy.
Because by the time, if we're just having a tertiary education pathway, its decisions are made. If we can get in at the high school level, then we can promote local talent and keep them here. So if we're going to do advocacy, that's where it needs to start back there.
Thanks. I'll take that one on notice as well.
But otherwise, great piece of work. Thank you.
Any other questions? No.
I'll ask one.
Yes, Councillor Swamp.
In the executive summary, and we were talking about this earlier, we mentioned the figure of 600,000 visitors.
Karratha.
Have we got any factual evidence of that number of visitations, and is it wise to use that data when you consider what that actually come back to saying, 1,800 visitors a day to Karratha across the year? Every day. And whether or not that's real.
So the question is the Karratha figures right?
Yes.
Let's take that one on notice. We'll come back to you. Clearly, that's a third-party data. Right?
Absolutely, it's
Yeah. So let's take that one on notice, and we'll put that in the briefing notes. Thanks, Adrian. Great. Thank you.
All right, no more questions on the strategy? Nope. Okay. Moving on to 12.1, which is the 7 Mile Waste Facility, Class 3, Cell 3 and 4 construction tender outcome, of which we have a presentation.
Hello.
Hello, MJ.
7 Mile Waste Facility. So we've obviously finished our tender evaluation process and are looking to award this contract. The current state, so Cell 0 has been exhausted and has now been capped, with our Cells 1 and 2, the current storage locations. They were built in 2021 and are expected to reach capacity towards the end of this year. Hence why we're looking to get in and build Cells 3 and 4. In terms of what we're actually doing, so in the drawing there, you can see where Cells 3 and 4 highlighted in purple are going to go, effectively right next door. Key elements of the scope are obviously the preliminary earthworks and then the required geosynthetic liner, HDPE liner and the leachate collection system. There's also then some requirements to make sure we manage stormwater around the site. And then down the bottom there, I just included a detail that sort of paints a picture as to how that geosynthetic liner and HDPE liner integrate. And then, yeah, the leachate isn't shown in that, but it's effectively a fluid collection system as it decomposes. The tender process, so we had 6 bids that we received, 5 of them under budget, and overall 3 or 4 of the bids were really high quality. We've obviously got some experienced civil contractors available to us at the moment, and the evaluation process was really good and competitive. The key things for us that we assessed on was obviously experience and methodology. The supply and installation of the liner, leachate and the geosynthetic layer are key to the project being successful, and we need quality experience in this installation. The end of the project, we have to be able to certify that the construction methodology is compliant in order to reach our DWER license conditions, because it does need to be certified. So one of the control measures that we have in this project is we also engage a third-party quality assurance contractor who plays a key role between us as the client and the contractor who's doing the actual works to make sure that they meet the specification and installation methodology required. So we're obviously looking to award the work next week. Assuming that we do that, we'll obviously then proceed with notice of award and contract finalisations throughout March, and be looking to start works late March, early April, with a plan to be complete in August.
And any questions, councillors? Tender outcome, Councillor Roots.
Do we foresee that this methodology of dealing with waste will proceed into the future? Creating cells?
Through the chair, I guess the earlier question around waste to energy is part of the solution in terms of obviously being able to divert from landfill, and obviously looking at alternate ways of processing the various waste streams that we have, be it residential, commercial or industrial, is obviously part of our strategy. We've had an accelerated, I guess, period of time where we're now at over 100,000 tonnes of waste per annum, whereas past years we'd had 75 or 80,000. So we'd predicted that we were needing to construct these cells after about 7 years. It looks like we're going to need to do it in around 6. So our aim would be to always try and defer capital by finding interventions into what we can do with waste rather than having to put it to landfill. So it's possible, but I can't commit without the solution being sitting here on what the alternate will be.
That's fair. I suppose I also had a follow-up question that if we did foresee that somewhat of a replication could happen in the future, would we look at some form of local component to be able to upskill people who are here for the future?
Yeah, through the chair, that's a reasonable point and something I think we'll maybe take that on notice. I get the intent of that. I think the managers indicated clearly where the risks in this project and the experience is needed, but building that capability and understanding at a local level is something that we definitely should take on board. We look at how we can maybe include some local contractors in understanding the methodology.
Councillor Roots, question. Any other questions?
Just one. Is the construction company, they're local?
Through the chair, they're not based here permanently, but have had fairly sizable contracts in our region over the last 4 years, including, I think, the capping, as per the question, of Cell Zero. And we're also the civil contractor for Main Roads who constructed Houston's Cove Road.
What's the value?
Through the chair, the value of the contract is within the budget, which is set at $5.2 million. Yeah, it's 4 points. And I'm sorry, my laptop died.
It's in the report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Slother?
One question, and you probably already told me. When was the first cell completed? That had done previously?
Managers set it up as 2021.
Yes, so I just said.
Oh, and just a bit of the knowledge bank. How long did Cell 1 last? How long were captive? Cell 0?
Cell 0.
Through the chair, that was probably an operation for close to 30 years. Appreciating that Cell 0 was the equivalent size of about 6 cells.
Supercell.
It was a supercell, yeah, that's right.
It was when a time and place when it was less sophisticated.
No mining, you mean?
Correct.
Any other questions? Nope.
Thanks,
Okay.
MJ.
Thanks, MJ.
Thanks.
Right, 12.2 is the cleaning services tender outcome. Do we have a presentation? So no, we don't. Okay, with the officer's recommendation that council accept tenders submitted by Karratha Cleaning Proprietary Limited, Service Package 2, the Karratha Leisurepex, Service Package 4, the Porter Headquarters, and Service Package 6, the Eastern Corridor Facilities. Bypalm Enterprise Proprietary Limited for Service Package 3, the Karratha Airport, and Service Package 5, the Administration Facilities, and Blue Hat Group, trading as Demel Cleaning Services for Service Package 1. As the most advantageous tenders to form a contract based on assessment of compliance criteria, quality criteria, and pricing structures offered in RFT 51. And 2, that we authorise the CEO to execute the contracts with Karratha Cleaning, Bypalm Enterprise, and Blue Hat Group, subject to any variations of a minor nature. Does anyone have any questions in regard to our cleaning services tender outcome?
One question, and bear with me, is just with the number of contractors that have been awarded to the different service packages, if one of those companies were to develop other businesses, then could they be considered? Yeah, can one be considered without having to resubmit a tender?
In short, the answer is no. This is not a panel contract. This is appointing for a lump sum figure a tenderer to deliver a service at a facility. And for whatever reason, if that contract was to cease, the city would need to go out for probably a short-term quotation to continue services, whilst then re-tendering for the cleaning services for that facility.
So does that give us any more scope then? Like I understand the reasoning for breaking it down into different packages was to be able to provide a bit more coverage, I suppose, or better servicing.
Yeah, through the chair, it's about determining who's best to deliver what package. It wasn't necessarily to have a fallback plan for each facility.
Okay.
Can I ask, and I don't know if this is something that we do, but like all of these contractors applied for multiple units.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sorry, councillor.
I'm just curious, is if they haven't received multiple contracts, is their business going to fold because of that? Is it even something we should ask?
So through the chair, the way that this tender has been structured is to enable contractors to bid on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 contracts, or them combined. They can pick and choose which contracts they wish to submit for based on their capacity to be able to deliver, based on their methodology to service, and based on their price. This tender has been evaluated looking holistically across the board, but then specifically for each facility, because they were asked to provide responses in terms of each facility. And that's why you'll see in the confidential evaluation different scoring that has been applied and different pricing that's been applied for each particular facility. So the evaluation panel has evaluated each facility,
yes,
and then using, I guess, putting it through a lens of saying, right, is it then feasible that a contractor takes on all of the facilities, or what is trying to determine the right amount to award to the company who obviously come out first within that evaluation? So that's the process and the methodology that the team has been through. It has little regard for the current contracts that companies may have. It has regard for this tender for what was specified.
And I understand that how we did that when we broke it up.
Yeah.
But I suppose because nobody just applied for one unit, they all applied for multiple.
Through the chair, and it's been evaluated that way.
Yeah. I'm just wondering that if they haven't got more than one unit, are they now not going to be able to maintain their business? I don't know if that's something that we need to even
That's
consider.
not part of our criteria. We're trying to come up with the best service for our community and the best value for money. But I mean, you're always going to be considering what combination is going to give you the best economies of scale, for example, and the best efficiencies and those sorts of things. But in terms of the detail of the confidential evaluation, if you want to have a longer conversation, we probably should go behind closed doors.
Follow up on Councillor Swaffer's question. To say, for example, we've got tenders out for cleaning contracts in different areas. And I'll take the airport as an example. Say that company can't fulfil their obligation in their tender to clean the airport. How would we then ensure that gets done? Is it just come back in-house to our staff to get it done? Or, I think just Councillor Swaffer's point is, what mechanism do we have for others to pick that work up?
Through the chair, in a technical sense, you would need to conclude that contract in order to have another process or commence another process. And yes, we would need to consider what our short-term solutions would be, whether that is contracting out in the short term or whether it is supplementing it with our staff. More recently, we have supplemented with our staff the facilities at the quarter, and we have been cleaning that for a period of time so that we could line these contract periods up together. So we have got that ability to scale up if we need to, appreciating that what's not in here is the facilities that the city does clean still with its own existing staff. So there is some risk mitigation, but we would have to go through a really long and detailed process with the contractor for them not to be able to fulfil the duties of the contractor.
The first
we would
thing you
be
do is
working very proactively with the contractor to ensure that he's successful.
I mean, the question's only asked on knowledge of the past, right? When all of a sudden there's people who don't turn up for work. And next thing you know, there's nothing happening.
And through the chair, that's a great risk that needs to be mitigated by these contractors delivering these services. These are public-facing primary facilities within the city.
Any other questions?
But we always work with our suppliers on their achievement of the contract, right? So that's the very first thing. And if the contract is, if they've defaulted and they crashed and burned, then we have to look at it from a procurement lens.
Yeah.
How do we then go out into a procurement process for that contract?
We should know that obviously in advance.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you would have gone through,
So
as Simon said,
continue.
you would have gone through a process there of managing defaults for a while before you get to that. So
There's, again, through the chair, there's contract startup meetings, there's setting out all of the expectations, there's the monthly audit process, and then there's constant feedback. There's show cause notice for improvements that are required that we'd expect.
Yeah.
There's breach notices effectively within contracts that provide for escalation provision. There's all of those measures that we work proactively with the contractors on.
Thank you for that.
One more question. It's great learning. Thanks.
all right. This is your job. You've got to ask questions.
If one of these were to decline the contract, can you go back to who was second or third preference?
Yep. Through the chair, that is an option under the legislation. If a preferred contractor didn't accept, we would have an ability to go to the next company.
Yeah. Great questions.
Yeah, very good.
Any other questions on the cleaning services tender? No. 12.3 is the Wickham South Youth Rec Area. Request to call for tender.
No
presentation. Checking my sheet. Okay, with the officer's recommendation, that council agrees to invite tenders for the Wickham South Youth Recreation Area in accordance with the scope of works outlined in this report. Councillors, do we have any questions on the tender, I guess?
Is this being funded by Rio? Or potentially to be funded by Rio?
Yes.
Through the chair, there's $750,000 funding that's secured.
You're going to ask about bouldering.
What is bouldering?
Yeah.
I'll sell you some if you want.
That's right. This has been around our desk for a little while, this project. Yeah, any questions other than it's good to get it out to go to tender?
Yes.
Take that as there is none. 13.1 is our annual community survey results, of which we do have a presentation. And we have Matthew Dukes online.
G'day guys, sorry, just bear with me while I get this up.
Right, thanks, Matt.
All right, how are we going?
Yeah,
got
good.
the tech going?
Where are the kids, Matt? They
You might see some running past. All right. Sorry, can everyone see the presentation?
Yeah, we just hang a sec, we're just trying to make sure you can see it, Matt.
Well, I can't anymore.
Yeah, we were so clever at setting it up that we tricked ourselves out of it.
Let's try this again. How's that?
Yeah, can you see that?
Okay. Yes, I can see it. Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, thanks, guys. For those who I haven't met, I'm Matt Dukes, Manager of Advocacy and Stakeholder Relations. And tonight I'll just give you a quick overview of the 2025 Community Survey results report that you will be considering at the Feb Council meeting. So just a little bit about our approach. The survey is the city's primary sentiment and trend tracking tool. It measures the overall satisfaction of the city's performance, the performance of city services and facilities, and also livability factors, which are typically outside the control of the local government, but the city advocates on. The city's been conducted in the same format since 2012, which means we've got 14 years of trend data available to us. This year, the survey was conducted for 4 weeks from the 20th of October to 17th of November. The timing or delivery of the survey promotion moved from February to October. This was for a couple of reasons. One, to align with the council plan, which was adopted by council in June last year. And the second is the timing allows kind of better feed into budget and operational planning. In terms of how it was promoted, the survey is promoted primarily online, social media, website. However, that's supported this year with targeted marketing campaigns in shops and at key facilities. And this year, in-person engagement pop-ups in Karratha, Dampier, Wickham and Roebourne. We offered a short survey again this year for accessibility purposes. In terms of participation this year, there's 1,060 completed responses, which is lower than last year's number, but that was a very high response rate last year. And it does mean, you know, the data is still statistically robust for analysis. Just a quick snapshot of the overall performance of the city. Overall, 73 out of 100, or the city's overall performance score was 73 out of 100, slightly down from 75 last year, but still pretty stable. 64% rate the city performance as good or excellent. 73% say the city is a good or excellent place to live, which is up 2%. And only 4% rate the city is poor or very poor, which is our lowest recorded result. 32% say the city is better or much better than 12 months ago, and intentions to stay continue to strengthen. 40% of people have no plans to leave, and 16% intend to stay for 5 years or longer. In addition to the sentiment and performance ratings, we ask what the city should focus on in the next 12 months. The responses are open-ended, which means people can raise anything, and the feedback is broad. But there are key themes that come out. These themes will not be new to you. Housing affordability, availability continues to be a key theme. Shade and public amenity has come up strong this year. Playgrounds, public toilets, walkways, things that people, their touch points, everyday touch points. Airfares and connectivity, very strong theme this year. Probably correlating with some community action in that space, and that's come out as a key theme. And safety and crime prevention is a regular theme in these surveys, but again, popping up this year with a kind of bit of youth programming in there. Many of these issues sit partially or largely outside the city and council's direct control. However, they are important for our advocacy efforts. Next steps. So following council's consideration and adoption next week, the results will be published online and promoted within the community, shared with stakeholders. We will then start feeding that into our service planning and budget setting. Our advocacy positions will be updated and potentially new advocacy positions established, and the draft budget will be presented to council in June, which will capture the city's operational response to the survey. And that is it. Any questions?
Yes, councillors, are there any questions on our community survey results? Yes, Councillor
And
James.
future surveys have an option where we actually get the results from ratepayers versus residents.
Oh,
Good question. We can take that into consideration. Each year, we actually are thinking that we do need to look at the survey because it's becoming very long.
Yeah.
And we possibly need to have a bit of a think. But that's definitely an option we can consider putting in there if the council would like to have slice it that way. Yeah, we currently have different demographic groups, you know, age, gender, suburb. Aboriginality is one that we ask so that we can understand how that particular cohort is receiving our services, but we could look at ratepayer versus resident.
question, Councillor Harris.
When I was looking through the opinions about our city, right, compared to 12 months ago, I looked at the columns and I was saying, oh, well, you know, down a little bit here and up a little bit there. But when I added them up, there's only 95% accounted for. There's 5% missing off that column. So is that 5% of people didn't answer that question, or?
Good question. I'd need to look at whichever particular graph you're looking at, but you're right, there will be a little bit of rounding.
Compared to 12 months ago, opinions about the city 12 months ago.
Okay, yeah. Let me take that on notice, but it could be that there's a bit of rounding going on in the calculations. There's a lot of data.
Race, and that 5% could be very important one way or another.
True, yeah, especially when we're bragging about going up a couple of points, right? So, yeah. So let me take that question on notice.
Just one other observation, Matt. I think what you've done is really good. I think when I look through from housing, which I know about connectivity, airline stuff, I like the idea around the shade program. Gives us something to think about towards the future. The last one, though, I thought was an interesting one for us because it was about safety and community and stuff in our community. It's a little bit out of our realm, but I'd be interested and get some sort of feedback around those figures and what sort of we should see with police, what sort of results they're getting in terms of their crimes, sort of bringing it together, because our community is putting it into our surveys about feeling safe and about children activity, activating it and keeping or something else. So it'd be kind of good if we could pull that part a bit and have a look for us as we move forward. Is there something more we can do that's activating stuff? Are we getting better use out of our facilities or something? But I think it's a great bit of work. It's good and it gives us something to focus on. It's good.
Probably doing another update from Whale Pole. New year, new update.
Yeah, it's good to see.
The police are doing.
So our team, obviously, day to day, we work with youth programs and also WAPOL in terms of dealing with particular, you know, hotspots and particular incidents that happen in different facilities and around the city. So we have those conversations on a regular basis as part of running youth services, which is one of the key areas that you see some of the antisocial behaviour tends to come through those sorts of channels. But yeah, we can definitely organise for WAPOL to give us a bit of an update.
It was interesting to see that, you know, it wasn't necessarily actual crime, it was perceived fear.
Fear, that's the thing. Yeah.
So I was going to get that. Sorry, I did have a question.
Sure.
No, but I know that was a statement. So
Yeah, same question.
Did you have a question?
I do have a question. Now I've lost it. When we're looking at the town suburb overall scores, I'm just a bit confused. I know that, you know, it was always the danger when the ward system was dissolved. But I do spend a lot of time, I do not live there, but I do spend a lot of time in our Eastern Corridor and looking at those results decline. But there is just a bit of a discrepancy. It says that Wickham's gone up, but the statistics don't actually indicate that. It looks like
we might have the green arrow wrong there.
Yeah. So just on that one. And can I just confirm, please?
Not a green arrow, it's a red.
It's a red one. It's a red one. But glad that this can then go on and inform where we're directing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And also, could I appreciate that consistency is important for data sets and informing us, but
is there going to be a review at the ability to have a more accessible for people who potentially English is not their first language, or for people who don't have access to? Yeah, I know we do offer hard copies and that sort of thing, but is that something we're looking at?
But that's an ongoing review in terms of how we do it. And we introduced the short form survey last year and this year for exactly that reason. So it's a way for someone to actually engage, but without having to get onto a computer, and it's very sort of simple in terms of, not simple, but it's just covers the key information that someone might want to give us feedback on. And the idea is we provide that to different community organisations and to libraries and different places where people might want to interact with us in a different way. And that's another reason why we have pop-ups, and we, have people, our own teams out there with iPads and kind of facilitating that feedback through as well. But I think every year we learn and improve, and we're always, I think, looking at the constituents who engage, we're always sort of looking at the demographics and how well are we capturing different parts of our community and making sure that we've got as many different types of voices as possible.
I feel like, how you look after a community is to look out who's missing. And just one final thing, I know that the TAFE at Roadburn has been doing some great things in the way of digital literacy. Is that something that we could potentially look at supporting people? We see that computers are definitely the way forward, but is that something that the city could potentially offer to support?
Well, I would actually say the onus is more on us to create user interfaces that are easier for people to engage with. So, so I think, so the answer is yes. It's not uncommon for local governments to get involved in sort of supporting people with digital learning and digital support services in libraries, for example. That's really common. But also we can be looking at our survey design and making it really easy and interactive for people. So there's different creative ways for us to look at those challenges. Yeah, it's good feedback.
There's so much information on here, but again, it's a lot of services, and we are not the backbone of. And I feel as if there's a lack of communication back to the ratepayers and the mums and dads about what we do and what we don't do. So is there some simple, straightforward campaign or something that we can run to say this is how we can make our community better, this is how we can add, just something more grassroots, really. Like, these are beautiful, amazing documents and strategies that we produce, but I wonder how many people actually read them on the ground.
Well, it's funny, the executive team were having a conversation about, and the management team, about can we, in light of what we were talking about with community engagement earlier, how do we close the loop? How do we explain to people, you told us this and then we took this action, this is what happened?
Yes.
And we were actually talking about that in the context of this survey, like how do we perhaps through the year give people feedback? And so if we put up a shade over a park, we kind of go, you told us you wanted more shade, and this shade has now been built and we listened and this is what we did. So almost kind of closing that loop up, because we will listen to the feedback and we will build it into our plans for the year ahead. But then as we're actually out there doing that stuff, we can actually say to people, we'll take that back. You told us in the survey this, and now we're actually doing it, So I think there's some communication on a sort of a piece by piece basis. So at that point in time, but trying to actually capture people's attention and communicate with 25,000 people is, that's a game in itself, right?
But that's why we've got a manager of advocacy and stakeholder engagement. Hey, Matt.
Yeah, to come up with these strategies. Yeah, thumbs up, he says. That's it. Fantastic.
All right. Any other questions on our community survey results? Nope. Right, moving on to 13.2.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Which is our 2026 Council and CEO communications agreement. With the officer's recommendation that we adopt the 2026 Council and CEO communications agreement. Does anyone have any questions on this communications agreement? Well, we discussed it recently, and it was busy doing a decision, thinking that we will have enough information that we can share on the agenda.
Hopefully. Oh, we've discussed it at council workshops in December and in February.
Yeah.
But just for those people in the public domain, there's council and the CEO have had a communication agreement, which is about how communication flows between the officers and council. And we've had that in place for a while. And then also local government reforms are actually formalising that and codifying it. And so we've done a refresh of the document to reflect the regulations. And it's, the regs are we're still awaiting the detail from the legislators. So like we were talking about before about the community engagement stuff, we're a bit ahead of the curve here. But council requested that this be done shortly after the new council getting elected in. So we're meeting that commitment that you requested.
Thank you. Community and communications in my head. Any questions in regards to our communications agreement at all? Probably something itching at you, I can see.
I'll pick up on a question I got asked earlier offline, which is kind of what this agreement does is it kind of formalises requests for information, but it's when council are acting using their legislative right to procure information from administration. There are particular things you can do to use the power of the legislation to get that to happen. But that's kind of in place to give you strength and the ability to do your job without interference from a CEO or administration. But if our working relationships are going well, a lot of that will actually happen naturally through conversation and to and from. So in some ways, this is like a safety net. And it doesn't mean that you can't still talk to your administration and say, can I have more information about this or more information about that? And we'll be able to support you in your roles as well.
Thank you, CEO.
That's right.
So if there are no questions on that, to 13.3. Which is the City of Karratha's position on electoral reforms. With the officer's recommendation that council is to endorse the introduction of compulsory voting for local government elections, endorses the implementation of 4 yearly elections through an all-in, all-out method, and recognises that adopting recommendations 1 and 2 will result in additional electoral costs to the city. Does anyone have any questions on the officer's recommendation?
Who is this? No.
Who's the officer?
The Walga done their survey and they were against endorsing this. So
correct.
Are we taking a lead from who are we taking our lead from?
Well, it was an interesting challenge as a CEO to remain neutral, but then also put a recommendation because I had to put 1 for or 1 for against or whatever. But one of the things I would just sort of say to you is, so first of all, I had some informal conversations with councillors at the workshop to get a bit of a gauge as to whether or not there was I suppose a preference or a sentiment, but without obviously making a decision. So I was guided by some feedback that I've had from our local government. But also the recommendation that's put in there, it's interesting in that Wellga represents something like 139 councils, 92 replied to the survey, but there was very clear differences in terms of the makeup of councils as to whether or not they supported it or not. So compulsory voting was supported by the majority of metro councils, but also majority of larger councils, class 1 and 2 councils. We're a class 1, we're one of the larger councils. So metro councils were more likely to want compulsory voting, larger councils were more likely to. So that tells you that even though the numbers, it's actually a lot of the smaller councils, probably in the wheat belt, who probably swayed the outcome of that survey. And then the other thing that was interesting was Wellga's comments around state by state. Western Australia and South Australia are actually an outlier compared to other states. So I thought that was quite interesting. If the minister is influenced by that, there's, the Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania are all in a compulsory voting model and an all-in, all-out model as well. So so she may be influenced by the fact that it's fairly common in other states, and Western Australia is a bit of an outlier. So it was on the basis of that information that I've put that forward. But clearly, I need to put something on the agenda for you to respond to, and then it's over to you to debate the hell out of it and have fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Point number 3, recognising that it'll add additional cost to the city.
Yeah.
I understand there'll be more time in counting, but won't there be a saving in only running one election every 4 years instead of 2? So doesn't it sort of balance out a little bit?
I think it's actually because you're moving into compulsory voting, the sheer volume of electors that are going to be managed. So on a
there's still only one mail out of 13,000 rather than 2 mail outs of 13,000 votes.
Yeah,
so
the cost per elector will go from about $5 to $10 per elector. So
you're only going to be doing one election every 4 years instead of 2 in a 4-year period.
Yeah, look, I'm going on the figures that were provided to me, but I think we're going to have a bigger process. Yes, you're right. It's we're going to be doing it half as often. So we're doing it once every 4 years instead of once every 2 years. But we are, I suppose we're going out to the same electors group is what you're saying. Yeah.
But you're going through from out of the electors group, you're going from 23% of them.
Yeah. Well, it goes out to every household. So that's your point, is that it goes out to every household already.
Still already anyway.
So that makes sense.
I know your voting times, your counting time's going to increase, right?
Counting time will increase. And then also the other thing they put in there is compliance costs will go up because you then have to chase the people who didn't vote. Yeah.
So on that too, the fine for not voting, where does that go?
It would look. It'll depend on how they do it in the regs, but it could be something where the local government provides. I don't know. Do you know what they do in New South Wales?
Yeah, you get fined by the local government.
Yeah, like same as state government. So the WAC will take it all over, and it'll be controlled by them, and they will issue fines like they do now for states.
So then they get the money.
So the money won't go to recoup the election costs.
No. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a really good point that you make in terms of challenging whether it actually will drive the costs up. That was the information that was provided to me, but I think you raised some good observations there. I'm happy to take your comments on board and give that some further thought. Yeah,
do you have any idea of when she's going to make the decision, or if she's going to even make these changes?
The minister has been in the process of effectively foreshadowing and canvassing. So I've been to a number of different events now in local government where the minister is making very clear that on her agenda is considering compulsory voting and moving to a full spill. I think myself, I believe that she's basically laying the runway to that as a process. So WELGA is effectively asking local governments, if you want to bark, now's the time to bark, because you're going to have to get in front of it. And so they're trying to gauge the opinions of local government. My personal view, if I had to put money on it, would be that at the next local government election that would be due in 2 years' time would be the date that she would be working towards, if I had to put money on it. But I obviously only have my own opinion and no facts to base that on. But I'd be saying it would be we did the election in 25, it would be the 2027 election. That and if I was to put my money on it, that would be a full spill in 2027. But that's just my own personal view.
And you think that decision would be made sooner rather than later, because you've got to not only inform the community, but they need to get their heads around the fact that they will be voting.
Just a couple of things, I think, just to add a bit more, I think at the end of the day, government will do what government wants. Just as a survey from WELGA, I think the writing is on the wall. There is a few things for us, though, to understand the bigger picture that we touch on some costs tonight, but so you got to understand that once it comes to compulsory, you'll register for a postal vote, but it will be recalled on election day, just like the state and federal elections. So the question would be around that, and that's where I think the CEO has touched on costs. There will be a fair bit involved in that, but it's one of those things in life. I think for myself,
is there a question?
There is a question.
Councillor.
I was attending this, but I will make a point. I don't support it, but I don't think I can change the world. So at the end of the day, government do what government wants.
And are you debating this? Sorry, I'm sharing.
That's all right. But the question would possibly be, I think we for this item here is that if we all go as a group, I think the important part to take away is a question that needs to be asked. If they can come up with a clear decision and just move forward on it, because what I don't want to do is be part of a campaign from WELGA that just goes some saying no, some saying yes. Can we just get WELGA to come up with a combination and say we're going that way?
So your question is, can we get WELGA to do that?
Yes.
The answer is yes. WELGA will do it.
Yeah, I think that's what WELGA is trying to determine. What they're a member-based business. They're trying to determine what the appetite is. And at the moment, they've got a position. I suppose the question they're asking is, given the minister is foreshadowing, should they look at that question? Now we're not talking about necessarily hypotheticals, and it's starting to take shape. WELGA's asking, has the appetite of the industry changed? So. Yeah, so we'll be providing our feedback to them post your resolution.
There are no more questions. We'll move on, but we can debate that next week, and it comes down to a personal opinion on how you think
that's right.
Local government elections should be held. 13.4 is the information report for concessions on fees for city facilities. Actually, all of 13 is information. Does anyone have any questions on the information items?
Are we going down by number? Or you?
We can. Councillor Swapper, Councillor Walker, hang on.
Mark.
13.4. Yeah, do you have something on 13.4? 13.5. Anyone got anything on 13.6?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to ask, I was just looking at the Red Earth Arts Precinct total attendance across the last 6 months, and it seems significantly down most months. I'm just wondering if there's been any review on those numbers and if there's any data around that, or have you compared that to the financial year previous?
On a page, I might take that one on notice if that's okay.
Yeah.
Good question though, because the Arts Centre seems to be booked out every week. Yeah.
And it does depend what activities are going through there in terms of is it high volume.
Yeah, and I read, like some of the bar takings down because it's a different kind of you know, events that are being held there, but then cinema numbers are up. So I was just kind of seeing where that disparity is coming from.
Yeah, great. We'll provide you with some more information on that.
And I had the same question about the youth shed, seems to be down. And the base not so much, but the youth shed seems to be down. Yeah.
Through the chat, I will take that one on notice because I know that we did change the methodology of how we're capturing attendance this year. So we did find there was quite a bit of double counting occurring. So we're kind of so that would be part of the reason. But there also may be other considerations as well. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Roots.
That would answer my question, but I just wanted to find out if are we able to call out how we do ascertain numbers.
We'd like a little bit more information around the method of counting. Yeah. In any particular service or just generally?
Yeah, just with our facilities.
Just do it for all of them? Yeah. No, that's fine. The director's happy to kind of do a bit of a summary for you across the facilities. Sure.
Even if it's just a summary, because I know it's likely to be different at each.
It's different for each facility.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. That's fine. That's a good question. I understand the methodology.
Pleased to know that it's it's already been done.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question.
Any other questions on 13.6?
Yeah.
I could use my menu bar.
Yeah.
Right. 13.7 is the information report on community experience for December 2025. So this is just last one was November, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, we've got November and December.
Any questions on this? Because the numbers look different again. Councillor Swallow.
Still down.
Still down.
Okay, any other further questions on 13.7? .8 is the development services update, which there is no updates. 13.9 is the record of tender outcome and the delegation for the Karratha Airport Terminal Seating Replacement Project. Any questions on any of the tender outcomes and the delegation through 13.9, 13.10? 13.10 being the Karratha Airport Management Review.
Will we go back out for? Was it Arnold and like the seeing?
Yeah, through the chair, we're currently updating the document, new dates intending to go back out. We've also just done a market sounding exercise to raise awareness of it, and we've given a debrief to the unsuccessful tenderer.
Thank you.
Any other questions on those two other delegation tender outcomes? No. All right, well, 14 is motions of which previous notice has been given, which is none. 15 questions by members of which due notice has been given, which is none. 16 urgent business approved by the person presiding or by decision. There are none. 17 is matters behind closed doors, of which there are just a couple of attachment items that we're going to deal with. So 18 is the closure of the public briefing meeting. So the meeting is closed at 7:49 p.m. We'll see you all on the dinner.